something very interesting. It is based on the teachings of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs Zatzal. It is the story of the collapse of ancient Egypt. Now, it is true that it is specifically about the story of the Exodus, but it is also a topic that is relevant to the collapse of the civilizations as a whole. So it's very interesting. The idea of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, we are going to get to that. So first of all, just a small introduction about the collapse of the civilizations, and then we are going to get to ancient Egypt and the Kriyat Yamsuf. This is also like a preparation for Pesach, which tomorrow evening is going to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And it says that the nation of Israel was redeemed on the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and Bezrat Hashem, in our generations, hopefully, we're going to be redeemed also in the Chodesh Nisan. So, Bezrat Hashem, yeah. So, first of all, what do you think is the reason for the collapse of the civilizations?
In general?
Yeah.
Tyrannical powers.
Okay, very good. Tyrannical powers. Shoshan, is you're saying that when a civilization...
corruption,
that's right.
decadence. It's like when the empires become very big, like they used to, because of their wealth, they used to indulge in all kinds of physical pleasures, and that makes them somewhat...
Well, physical pleasures work.
It makes them weak in the sense of they don't take the borders or the enemies seriously again, because if they feel safe as well. And they have all this wealth, and they indulge in that. It's also like a distraction. They, I don't know, maybe if you just some kind of numbness. I think like they're like so overpowered.
Very nice. Moral corruption is a big major issue with the collapse of the civilizations. Any more ideas?
Well, I think sometimes, not all the time, but like sometimes, like the king or the ruler is killed, and like the empire can't survive. It goes to anarchy, and everybody just collapses. Sometimes,
And you also greed. They want to keep
That's
the power
right.
and want more power, and that makes them. I don't know. But that leads also to an empire that they cannot hold it anymore at some point.
That is right.
Internal division.
That's right. But it's also a big issue. There was a British historian called James Froude, and he's got a very interesting lecture that he gave before the Royal Institution in 1864. Way back then. So he said something very interesting. Would anyone want to read it? It is in a source 1 and source 2.
Yes, indeed. James Froude, short studies on great subjects. One lesson, and only one, history may be said to repeat with distinctness, that the world is built somehow to moral foundations, that in the long run it is well with the good, in the long run it is ill with the wicked. But this is no science. It is no more than the old doctrine taught long ago by the Hebrew prophets. What then is the use of history? And what are its lessons? If it can tell us little of the past and nothing of the future, why waste our time over so barren study? First, it is a voice forever sounding across the centuries the laws of right and wrong. Opinions opinions alter, manners change, creeds rise and fall, but the moral law is written on the tablets of eternity. For every false word or unrighteous deed, for cruelty and oppression, for lust or vanity, the price has to be paid at least at last. Not always by the chief offenders, but paid by someone. Justice and truth alone endure and live. Injustice and falsehood may be long-lived, but doomsday comes at last to them in French revolutions and other terrible ways.
Thank you. So, a concrete example for this, a lesson of a history, would be the collapse of the Roman Empire. Now, in his monumental book, The Story of a Civilization, of the great American historian Will Durant, he says the following in a source number 3. Who would like to read this? This is a summary on the question of why Rome fell.
I read it. Why Rome fell? A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself within. The essential causes of Rome's decline lay in her people, her morals, her class struggle, her failing trade, and her bureaucratic despotism, her stifling taxes, her consuming wars, moral decay contributed to the dissolution.
Thank you. So, approximately 3,000 years before James Fraud and Will Durant, King David, he is said in a Tehillim, this exact idea. I would like to read a source 4.
How great are you, works God? How infinitely profound your thoughts. A man bare of reason does not understand, nor does a conceit fool comprehend this. When the wicked spring up as weeds, and all the tyrants flourish, that is so that they may be destroyed forever. For behold, your enemies, God, for behold, your enemies shall perish, all the tyrants shall break up of themselves. The righteous will flourish like the palm tree, he will grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon.
Oh, isn't that what you sing also someone Shabbat? Shabbat?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. This is a Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, a very powerful message. And Rabbi Hirsch has got a beautiful commentary on the Tehillim. We have it here in the library in the 2 volumes. This is the 2nd volume. Beautiful commentary. Whoever wants to study a Tehillim in a different level should really study the works of Rav Hirsch. It is beautiful. And one of the ideas that he says, you could see in a source 5, no human society can continue to exist without morality and respect for what is right. This is the order of a world as God created it, and it is by this immutable law of creation that evil and violence will perish. So, Rabbi Hirsch actually says that the world was created on foundations of immorality, that evil destroys itself. It is not going to succeed forever. It is going to fall eventually, and it is going to be because of its own deeds. You could read about it on a source 6, but we are not going to go into that now, because all this is just an introduction, so we could get to the topic of our shiur, and we're going to see a classical example to the teaching of Rabbi Hirsch that evil destroys itself. And we're going to come over here to a beautiful explanation of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. This is his book, A Covenant and a Conversation, on the book of Shmot. He has got a series of 5 books on every one of the Chumashim. Additionally, other books on the Parshat Shavua have been published. A Covenant and a Conversation, Lessons on Leadership, that is one book. Another book is on ethics, and then another book on spirituality, and another one on the life-changing ideas of Judaism, also based on the Parshat Shavua. And his best book is I Believe. It is also on a Parshat Shavua. It is his own beliefs on every parsha. Beautiful books. And I'm just going to say that his method in studying a Tanakh, it is that many times when people will study a Tanakh, they study it through a microscope. They try and understand each pasuk, they try and see all of the different commentators on every single verse, and this is a very important way. One should study Tanakh through a microscope. However, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs taught that one should also study a Tanakh through a telescope, meaning to receive broader pictures, to receive all of the events in a Tanakh, how they connected together. So this is his unique way. Furthermore, he also builds bridges between science and religion, philosophy and halakha, and in his commentary you could find many different quotes of scientists, philosophers, historians, and everything comes together because he had a unique ability to connect worlds and to build bridges between them. So this is just 2 words on his method of studying Tanakh. Now, let's see the idea that he talks about. First of all, just a short introduction before we get to Rabbi Sachs. We have to ask, when we are talking about the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea, there were 2 events that happened. There were 2 consequences from that. The first was that the nation of Israel was saved, and the second was that the Egyptian army was destroyed. So when we talk about the miracle of the departing of the Red Sea, which of these consequences are we referring to? What was the miracle? Was the miracle the fact that the nation of Israel was saved, or was the miracle of the fact that the Egyptian army was destroyed?
I think
We were
it's
saved.
that we saved, that we were saved. That's the emphasis.
That's right. That's right. And this is what the Beit Halevi says. The Beit Halevi was the great-grandfather of Rabbi Solovic from Boston. And he, I am just going to tell a smaller story about him, because it's connected to a Pesach, okay? On Erev Pesach one time, a Jew came knocking on his door. And he asked him, is it allowed to fulfill the mitzvah of the 4 cups of wine on a Pesach with 4 cups of milk? So Rabbi Solovic called his wife, and he told his wife, please give this Jew everything that he needs for the Seudah of a Pesach. Give him meat, give him everything that he needs. So his wife asked him, why didn't you just give him the money for 4 cups of wine? So he said that if he is asking a question about 4 cups of milk, it means that he doesn't have any meat, he doesn't have any food, so he have to give him everything. So this was the great ability of Rabbi Solovic, to read behind the lines, to see the situation under the surface. And his son and his descendants who founded the brisker method of studying a Talmud, they are famous of going deep under the surface and discovering what is hidden. So they obviously inherited from him. So
like
yeah,
that, I think
yeah.
the Moshe Israel looked at the miracle as that they drowned or killed the Mitzrayim.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we look at the Shirat Hayam, then it talks about how all the riders were swallowed up in the sea, and Hashem master of war, and how the other nations will hear about it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So if there's a dispute about that, is it the fact that the nation of Israel was saved, or that the Egyptian army was destroyed? So let's see what Rabbi Solovic says. Who wants to read source 7?
I can read it. Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the first of the dynasty of Brisk, known as Beit Halevi. The essence of the miracle was that the Red Sea parted before the nation of Israel. Therefore, the essence of the miracle was the salvation of the nation of Israel. From this came naturally revenge on the Egyptians who chased them and drowned. Their drowning was not considered a miracle at all, because naturally whoever entered the sea would drown.
Okay, thanks. So the Beit Halevi believes that the drowning of the Egyptians in the sea was not a miracle at all, because the sea was parted for the sake of saving the nation of Israel, and not for the sake of drowning the Egyptians. However, because the Egyptians were obsessed in capturing the nation of Israel, so they entered the sea and they drowned. So the law of nature is as simply as the Beit Levi said, whoever entered the sea would drown. So now we are going to see the beautiful explanation of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He builds on the explanation of the Beit Levi, saying that the miracle was the salvation of the nation of Israel, but the Egyptians, they actually brought onto themselves their own downfall, and this is extraordinary. This is a very, very nice explanation. So, who would like to read this? It is in a source 8.
I'll read. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Etzal, Covenant and Conversation, Exodus, the Book of Redemption, Magid books. Okay, the emphasis here is less on miracle than on irony. The great military assets of the Egyptians, making them almost invulnerable in their day, were their horses and chariots. These were Egypt's specialty. They still were in the time of Solomon, 5 centuries later. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. Continue?
Yeah. Thank you.
Suddenly, the Israelites traveling on foot had an immense advantage over the Egyptian chariots that were pursuing them. The wheels became stuck in the mud. The charioteers made ferocious efforts to free them, only to find that they quickly became mired again. The Egyptian army could neither advance nor retreat. So intent were they on the trapped wheels, and so reluctant were they to abandon their prized war machines, the chariots. They failed to notice that the wind had dropped and the waters was returning. By the time they realized what was happening, they were trapped. The bridge was now covered with the sea water in either direction, and the island of dry land in the middle was shrinking by the minute. The mightiest army of the ancient world was defeated, and its warriors drowned not by a superior army, not by human opposition at all, but by their own folly in being so focused on capturing the Israelites that they ignored the fact that they were driving into mud, where the chariots could not go. We have here 2 ways of seeing the same events, one natural, the other supernatural. The supernatural explanation, that the water stood upright, is immensely powerful, and so it entered Jewish memory. But the natural explanation is no less compelling. The Egyptian strength proved to be their weakness. The weakness of the Israelite became what was significant was less the supernatural than the moral dimension of what happened. God visits the sins of the sinners. He mocks those who mock him. He showed the Egyptian army, which reveled in its might, that the weak were stronger than they, just as he later did with the pagan prophet Balaam, who prided himself in his prophetic powers, and was then shown that his donkey, who could see the angel Balaam could not see, was a better prophet than he was. To put it another way, a miracle is not necessarily something that supersedes natural law. It is rather an event for which there may be a natural explanation, but which happening when, where and how it did evokes wonder, such that even the most hardened skeptic senses that God has intervened in history. The weak are safe, those in danger delivered. More significant still is the moral message such an event conveys, that hubris is punished by nemesis, that the proud are humbled and the humble given pride, that there is justice in history, often hidden but sometimes glorious revealed.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thanks.
So this is a beautiful explanation that the mighty chariots of the Egyptians, that they were their prized war machines. They were able to threaten all the other nations of the region, and they could have been saved. They could have been saved. The Egyptians, they could have been saved if they would have abandoned those chariots, but they refused to do so. Their obsession to attack the nation of Israel and the greed for power, that was their downfall. If they would have abandoned those war machines, they could have been saved. But they chose not to. They chose to cling on to those chariots because they knew that without them they were worthless. And that actually caused their downfall. So
Was it such a downfall? I mean, Mitzrayim still existed after that. They instituted a new king. They dealt with the business like they did yesterday. Didn't record it in their chronicles, and still were a great power after that till the Roman Empire.
So it is true that Egypt still existed, but it lost its prestige and it lost its power. The land of Israel used to be under the government of Egypt. They conquered the land of Israel, and by their defeat in the Red Sea, they lost all of their outposts and all of their holds in the region. They only remained in Egypt after that. They stopped becoming an empire. It could be that for a few years afterwards, a pharaoh, he managed to get a control, as it says in the Tanakh, but that was only temporary. They never returned to their glorious and powerful position after the defeat of Yam Suf. As I said, they lost their position in the land of Israel. Rabbi Hirsch, he says something very interesting. If you could read his source 10, he presents a very interesting distinction between the downfall of evil and the victory of the forces of good. So who wants to read source 10? This is very interesting.
Rabbi Hirsch, Psalms 1-11. For the destruction of evil, there is no need for direct godly intervention. God implanted the destruction of evil in the order of his world. However, the final victory of the forces of good, which are unable to protect itself, and weaken the evil with its spiritual and moral power, this is the action of divine power.
Thank you. So the destruction of a tyranny and evil, it does not need a direct a godly intervention. Because with the law of nature, of a world as God created it, it causes evil to destroy itself. However, the fact that evil destroys itself, it does not give us an exemption from fighting against it. The final victory of morality, it depends on God's help and also on our efforts. And this is very, very interesting. This is typical of the Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He used to say that the distinction between optimism and hope, it is that optimism is the belief that the world is going to be better in the future. But hope is the belief that we have to change the world for the better. We have to do action. So optimism is passive, but hope is active because it calls us into action. So in this way, we are optimistic that evil is going to destroy itself in the long run. But we cannot be optimistic just to sit and wait for it to happen. We have to make an effort to make sure that the world changes for the better through our own actions. And there's a beautiful example for this, a really nice example, which I like. In the beginning of the book of Judges, so it is told about the wars of the tribe of Judah in conquering the land. So we find a very surprising verse. And I look over here at a source 11. Hashem was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountains. But the inhabitants of the valley could not be driven out, because they had iron chariots. So, what question could you ask on this verse? A very disturbing question.
Yeah. I could ask, how can the Iron Chariots be stronger than Hashem?
That's right. This is mind-boggling. If the tribe of Judah received Hashem's help to conquer the enemy of the mountain, why didn't they receive Hashem's help to conquer the enemy of the valley? Hashem could do anything. So why did it matter, as you said, that the enemy had iron chariots? So what do you think is the answer?
Maybe God wanted Israel to fight for itself, or be together, or no, God can't do everything for you. You have to try.
Nice. Very nice.
You have to build iron chariots.
That's right, but it's also true. So the Rabbi Ishmael Laniado, who lived about 400 years ago, more than 400 years ago, he was from the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. He has got a beautiful commentary called a Kli Yakar. It is not the famous Kli Yakar on the Torah. It is a different commentary on the Tanakh. And he says the following explanation. He says that the tribe of Judah did not believe that they had enough strength to overcome the iron chariots of the enemy of the valley. And because that they did not believe that they had enough strength, so as you said, Josh, so they didn't even try to fight them. And constantly, they did not receive Hashem's help to conquer them. as a Winston Churchill said, that God helps those who help themselves. And because they didn't even try, so Hashem didn't help them.
That's what Winston Churchill said at first? Or somebody, or maybe you recited it somewhere.
He could be, but everyone quotes him, but it could be that he had an earlier source.
It sounds like the Miraglim.
Right. But if they thought, okay, it is impossible to conquer the land of Israel. So we could see from here that only when we are filled with the courage and resolution to fight evil do we receive Hashem's help. So this is a beautiful example that we have to do what we can. And also in the story of the parting of the Red Sea, we had to do something. It says it says in the Midrash that the nation of Israel had to walk in the sea before it parted, and then only when they showed Mesirut Nefesh, so it parted. So it shows here that optimism is not enough. You also need hope. You need action, and then a victory comes in Hashem's help. So this is what I wanted to study with you this evening, and I would like to wish you a Pesach, a Kasher ve'Sameach, and a very good Ben Azmanim, and a success for everyone.
תודה רבה.